Well, good morning. Welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. So glad to have you with us. I'm getting ready to make some keto desserts, and I need some sugar-free cookies to make the crust for a cheesecake. So I decided to make some. Now, you can sometimes find sugar-free graham crackers, and you can almost always find sugar-free regular cookies, but those are not particularly low carb because they're made with flour. So I'm making my cookies with almond flour, and they are yummy. So I'm going to show you how I did it. As always, if you like our video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you subscribe by clicking the little bell at the top right, you'll get a notice when we post new videos. Now let's get cooking. So we'll go over the ingredients, and you know there are 100 versions of this on the internet. I'll just show you mine. This is almond flour. This has about 3 grams of carbs per quarter cup. That's net carbs. I do lazy keto, just net carbs. This is monk fruit sweetener. It technically has no carbs that you need to count. It has some sugar alcohol, but except for the sugar alcohol, it's 0 carbs. This is vanilla extract, and this is a stick of butter. And we're going to use the whole stick, but we're going to divide it, and I'll show you that. So this is 6 tablespoons of the softened butter and a half cup of the monk fruit. You can use Splenda, you can use erythritol. I don't think I say that right, but you know what I mean. Now we're going to cream these together as much as you can. Artificial sweeteners don't cream the same way, in my experience, the same way that sugar does. But we're going to mix it up really well, and you want your butter to be soft, and you want to use a mixer. You can either use your stand mixer or a hand mixer. This is going to seem the whole time too dry to you, and it is pretty dry, but it works out just great. You'll find cooking with almond flour, it just feels different and reacts differently than flour does. So I've creamed those together as much as I can, and then I'm going to add the 2 teaspoons full of vanilla extract. You can put a whole tablespoon if you want to. It's just a matter of choice in flavor, but I do like a fair amount of vanilla extract in these. So you've got an almond and vanilla flavor all mixed together. If you want to use almond extract, you can do that too. I've never have. It might be a little overpowering with the almond flavor. And I just do love vanilla. So I'm going to do some time lapse on this because it actually takes a little bit. As I say, the almond flour doesn't blend as easily as regular flour. So now we're going to add, that's 1/2 cup of almond flour. We're going to add 2 1/4 cups all together. And this is pretty boring mixing this together, and it does take a little bit of time. So this is where I'm doing the time lapse. So I've added a 1/2 cup. I will mix that in. And here's the second 1/2 cup. And we'll mix that in. And just a note, I kind of lost count. While I was doing this, make a little slash on a piece of paper every time you add the 1/2 cup. Or you might lose track. Now the third 1/2 cup, and it's getting very dry and very difficult to mix, but just keep on plugging. It will mix in. And you can tell by this dough that these are going to be very dense, and mine will be chewy inside because I choose to do that. You can make them crisper, and I'll show you that. And then the fourth 1/2 cup. And if you want yours a little thin and crisper, you're going to stop now. You'll just mix these in, and you're not going to add the other 1/4 cup. As I say, I'm making mine to be the crust of a cheesecake. So I want them to be a little thick and a little chewy. And so I'm adding the additional 1/4 cup. So I'm adding another 1/4 cup. This is my 1/2 cup measure, but it wasn't quite full. So then you're going to have to get your hands in, because at this point It is very stiff, and you're going to want to get it very well mixed. So we just want it to stick together good. See, it's pretty crumbly, but it will stick together. So now I'm going to turn this out onto my glass cutting board here. You may hear a little bark or two in the background. Just pay no attention to them. And out we go. Now I'm going to work this a little bit because, you know, as I've said, what we've got here is something very, very dry. And you know, that may vary based on the weather, how moist the air is. But if it's really dry like this, do not panic. It's okay. And if you decide to go with the thinner, crisper cookie, it's not going to be quite this dry. But all I'm doing right now is forming it into a ball, pulling all of the little pieces together. And that's a job because they want to fly. There we go. We're going to form this here into this ball. And when you're sure there are no dry spots, we're going to cover it with a clean, damp tea towel or microfiber cloth. This is going to help it rehydrate, and we're going to wait about 30 minutes. And after about 30 minutes, I'm going to uncover it, and that should add just a little moisture. And I'm going to form this into cookies. You saw me, I put my little bit of butter over there. Let me get out a 2 tablespoon measure here, just to give you an idea of what size I'm making these. I really just normally eyeball it, but this will give you an idea. This is 2 tablespoons. Now, let's talk about crispy cookies. If you want to make crispy cookies, you're going to use about a tablespoonful, and you're going to press them out flat. And what you're going to see me do, there I'm buttering my hands, what you're going to see me do is make fairly thick, not very big around cookies, and they'll be chewy inside. And that suits my purpose, and it's actually how I like my cookies. But if you want crispy ones, when you're forming them, you just want to press them out a little thinner. And if you're pressing them out thin, they'll probably cook in about 12 minutes. I cook mine for about 15 because they are so much thicker. And you have to spend just a little bit of time on forming them. You don't want any cracks because the nature of the almond flour is that the cracks will just spread. So I'm making little cookies about the size of my thumb and forefinger together, and I'm going to keep one here, and I'll measure the second one by the first one, and that way I'll be sure to get them all about the same size. They don't have to be exact, of course, but you want them to be very close so that the cooking time is uniform. There you go. So I'm not going to let you watch me do the whole thing. Making them this size is going to be about 12, 13, maybe 14 cookies. If you make the smaller little flat ones, it could make a couple dozen. It just depends on how you make them. And if you make the smaller ones, I'll tell you how to figure the net carbs on them. So I'm going to put these in the pan, and I'll be right back. So I have a cookie sheet with a parchment paper over here, and just hold in mind when you're making this kind of cookie with almond flour, the size you make them is the size they finish up at. They don't rise, they don't spread out. You don't have to leave a lot of room for that. You can pretty much crowd your pan. And this gave me 13. And I'm going to use the rest of the butter here to coat these with a little butter. My oven has already preheated to 350. And if you make these thinner, you can cook them for 12 minutes. I'm going to start with 15. So I took these out after 15 minutes, and you want to cook yours until the outside is getting a little brownness on it around the edges. And of course the bottom of these is nice and brown. These do not brown like regular cookies. So I'm removing them to a rack. Do this carefully because right now they are very soft. After about 30 minutes they'll crisp up. But these smell wonderful. Let's plate them up. So after about 30 minutes, most of them went into a bag, but I have to try a couple. Got a little peanut butter here, which I love on cookies. So to figure your carbs on this, basically, this has 25 grams of net carbs from the almond flour, and just divide that by however many cookies you have. I had 13. That's going to work out real close to 2 a piece. Depending on what kind of sugar or sweetener you use, that should work pretty close. As I say, I'm kind of lazy keto. So, look at that. These are chewy. They're almost biscuity inside, except they're crisper than that. And this is how I love them. If you want yours crunchy and crispy, just make them thinner and cook them a little less time. It's going to work out either way. You can make these to suit your desires and your preferences and your family's preferences. So I'm going to have another bite here. I'm going to eat 2 cookies. That's about 4 grams of net carbs and a little bit for the peanut butter, which has no sugar, by the way. Hope you try this recipe and I hope you like it. And I hope to see you again tomorrow.